I was just like most other people would do, scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, looking for, parts, parts for my 71 Olds. That might be a story for another day. How I got rid of the 77 Olds. Years later, I had a thirst, wanted to get another Oldsmobile, and I was able to, of course, purchase a 71 Cutlass S. And so I was looking for extra parts for that. I was just looking for extra stuff to buy for it, and something just kind of, hey, because every so often I would look for a 77 Cutlass S. So I said, let me see what they got on this, and fitting, they got any 77 Cutlasses. And the other times I looked for 77 Cutlass S, either it was out of my reach financially because I didn't have the extra money, or it wasn't what I was really looking for. So, but this time I was looking through and I saw the 77 442, $2,500 or best offer. I said, okay, yeah, let me take a look at it. So I took a look at it, and in the pictures, it didn't look uber horrible, but it was like it had rust on it. And I was like, oh, well, I probably can maybe get a good price on it. Because in the listing, I think it had listed 77 442, everything original, comes with a rebuilt engine, never ran. And I was like, comes with a rebuilt engine. And then you look at the pictures, didn't have the hood up to show what was up under it, but you could tell by the way the wheels were sitting and the fender gap that it had no engine in it. So I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna be some assembly required. So I took a look at the car and I said, well, let me reach out to the seller. Reached out to the seller. Say, yeah, hey, name's Robert. Give me a call at this number when you get a chance. Because I think I asked a couple questions about the car, but it's like, just give me a call. And so I gave a call, and when I called, it was like, sort of like the other person wasn't expecting me. I'm like, hey, saw your ad. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I'm kind of busy right now, but hey, this is what I'm asking for it, and if you want to come and take a look at it, when do you have time? I was like, oh, Saturday. Okay, Saturday. So he told me to give him a call back, and he'll give me the rest of the information on that date to towards the weekend, to how to get to where he's at, because he was in a small town outside of Houston. I live in Houston. So Saturday comes, give him a call. He answers, hey, yeah, here's the address. And so I said, okay, I'll put it in my GPS and make my way out. So I left Houston, and he's heading north of Houston, outside of Houston. So got on the highway, made it. And I think it took me seemed like about an hour or so to make it there. And I ended up making it there. And it was out on a farm. It was a real rural area farm. And you saw cows and stuff when you were going out there. The cars scattered out all over the place. And this car, of course, my car that I got was behind the barn. And it was like next to the cow pasture. So I went on and took a look at it, and it was in much more, it was in a whole lot worse condition than I kind of initially looked at in the pictures. The rear quarter panels were rusted out, as well as, both side quarter panels were rusted out. The doors, lower panels were rusted out. The front quarters of the front fenders were perfect because it had nothing to catch anything to make it rust out. And it had, a hood. The hood was on it, but had no hood hinges or anything. Was just propped up on there. So I looked up under there, and you could tell this car had been exposed to the elements for probably a couple years, just to the elements. And the interior was intact. The interior was intact. It looks like, overall, the car looked like it had set, like somebody had started working on it and started doing stuff to it, but stopped and just let it set. So after, viewing that, I was like, man, this car is in a whole lot, worse condition. And then I'm like, all the parts together. You know, how am I gonna get this together? That's what I'm thinking about in my head. And then he showed me the engine. The engine was not in the car. It was on the engine stand. It was long block on the engine stand. No intake, no oil pan, but it just was on the engine stand, covered up in plastic. Plastic looked like the engine probably had set for. I think when all was said and done. Oh, sorry about that background noise. I'm out in my car. I think when all was said and done, it was had set probably for about 7 or 8 years. So when I got a chance to really look at it, and I was like, nah, I can't really pay 25. I can't pay nowhere near that. This is a rough project car. I said I could get it and road kill it, or just put it together and drive it, or what. But that's all it would be for a long time, because I don't have the skill set to weld on panels and stuff like that, and then it would be a long project. Well, possibly. So yeah. So I look in the car. The car has a lot of potential. Like I said, if it was in better condition. Looked in the inside, bucket seats, and it had a dual gate shifter. That I guess I wasn't familiar with dual gate shifters in 77 Olds, but I'm like sure it was possible. But I think I heard somewhere that you could get a dual gate shifter, even if it was an option from the dealership, they could have it installed. Had a dual gate shifter, of course, the sports steering wheel, and that was about it. Other things that it had was probably, I think it had, what's that? Typical stuff that Olds would have. I think it had cruise control, and I think that was about it. I don't think anything extra that I can think of, and digital clock. So yeah, it was pretty, probably would have been decently optioned for that time, other than it didn't have power windows or anything like that. So like I said, I looked at all of that and I said, okay, let me talk to the guy. So me and the guy talked. He was really cool, and he showed me around his farm, and he had other Oldsmobiles, some nice classic Olds too, some really really nice ones. And I would be interested in those if I had just extra money, and because like I said, he was a pretty nice guy, and we kind of befriended each other. So I told him about, we talked, and I told him the price I was willing to pay. He wasn't really cool with that price because it would have been considered by some people uber lowball. So I made him the offer, and he was like, oh, I have to think about that. And then he started asking me, what made me really interested in the car. I said, well, it's nostalgia. I said, that was my first car after high school. I drove that car all through college. I dated in that car. Me and my wife dated in that car. I had a lot of great adventures in the car. And so it was pretty much, for me to get it and to tool around with it, work on it, as just, hobby style. It'd be fun to kind of relive those days of me being in that car and when I was young. So when I told him that, it kind of sparked him. He turned around and said, hey, I kind of get that. And he said, hey. And I want to say he just sat on that. And I think I left, and I think I told him to let me know, if he sells it or whatever. And I think he called me back a couple days later or something like that, because it was one of those situations, where the person says they don't want to sell it for that price, and then they'll call you back and say, hey, I'm willing to work with you. And it turned out to be that type of situation. Like, yeah, we can do that. And he said, and the reason why I'm doing it because of that story you told me about you and your wife. Well, I'm like, yeah, it was true, and it was not a lot of nostalgia for me. I wasn't lying to him. It would be a nostalgia piece for me, especially at the price point and the condition that the car was, because I could just work on it and take my time, playing around with it and experimenting since it was in the condition it was. It wasn't like in great condition. So like I said, all said and done, he called me back. We agreed on that price, and he was uber nice. He ended up so I could get the car transported because I was gonna just rent some kind of U-Haul trailer and pull it back with my truck. But he was like, "Oh no, I got AAA. I get AAA to drop it off at your house." I'm like, "You can get AAA to drop off an unrunning car?" I said, "AAA didn't want to do that for me when I had another car like that. They almost wanted the car to be at least drivable, either steerable or you could put it in because this car had no transmission or nothing. It just and the brakes didn't work. So he was like, "No, I'll get them," and he did. He got AAA to come pick it up, and the back brakes were locked up, and so they drug it and put it on the flatbed. The people flatbedded it to my house and dropped it off. He gave them the address. Guy pulled up, and I was happy, and the guy kind of looked at me all kind of crazy, the tow truck driver, but I was excited to have it, and he dumped it in my yard. My HOA was not happy because I think I got it like in late December. And late December, I think the next week I got a letter from the HOA about inoperable cars being in the yard. And at the time, my garage, I think, was full of stuff and whatnot, weights, and I had a little area where we would work out next to my other car, my other Olds. So I had to clear all of that stuff out, make room, and push the car into the garage. I forgot to mention I got the engine and everything. I put the engine in the back of, because when I say truck, when I was talking about pulling it, I had a Ford Flex. And the Ford Flex wouldn't have had enough room to put the engine block in. I put it in the back of my wife's minivan, her Chrysler minivan, and it fit perfect. And I was able to get it in there because my son was visiting at that time because he didn't live in town at that time. Me and him, we didn't lift it up. We used some boards and we slid it over to the edge of this guy's barn because he had a cemented like garage style barn, and he slid it over and we put it on the back of the minivan and put it up in there. Bought the engine home and put it back on the stand and put it in the garage alongside the car. Yeah. And then the engine, I had to take a look at the engine because an Oldsmobile friend of mine who helped me build my engine, my Oldsmobile, reminded me, he said, all engine builders are not created equal. He said, you need to look the distributor gear squirter, because he said some people just assemble it back with the provided plugs, and the plugs don't have I think it was I can't remember the size of that 1/8 hole or something like that. It was something, a hole drilled in the cam thing to oil the gear. And he was totally right. I looked at that, but the engine was rebuilt. I borescoped down into the cylinders. You could see the date codes on the top of the pistons, and I think he said it was because I forgot to mention the engine size. It's a 403, and I think he said it had a mild cam in it because the reason why he was getting rid of the cars, getting rid of that car and other cars he had, because it was his father's. His father had fallen down sick and was too old to mess with any cars, and it tasked him with getting rid of the cars. And what happened was his father had started on that Oldsmobile, had bought it from somebody, because when I got the title was still, of course, in the person's name. I don't know what they called with the terminology for that now, curbstoning or something like that. But the car was still in the other person's name, and was I think was dated. But I was able to, get that straightened out with Texas DMV. But it ended up with that situation. Like I said, we ended up. He told me about, like I said, his father, and his father giving him the task, getting rid of cars and whatnot, and how his father had started on that car to redo it the way he wanted to. He wanted to rebuild the engine. The car was in good shape when he got it, so I could see if you're an old person and you had started on something and you left it out in the weather. 8 years of weather can kill certain cars. And with that Oldsmobile, if you When I had my Oldsmobile, I distinctly remember that when I parked up under the tree, trash would get down in the doors in the side part, and they would clog up the drain holes. The drain holes would end up thus holding water, so you could hear the water sloshing around. I used to take a flathead screwdriver and dig in the holes. Sometimes I think I would widen out the holes by bending it, and it would allow them to drain better, which means it didn't hold water like that in there. And the trunk area did the same, but my trunk would only hold water. I figured out it was holding water because I used to clean it out, because I was a person that would carry around tools and a bunch of greasy stuff, and so I would take degreaser and clean out my trunk with a water hose. And it got to the point it had two. You could pop the little things that I forgot. I don't know what the term, what those would be called. I would pop them out in the side parts, in the lower side parts of the trunk, to allow them to drain, so I could wash out my trunk with a water hose and let it dry out, and it would be uber clean. But you got to remember, I was probably about 18, 19 years old when I got that car. So yeah, I didn't, think it was a whole different way of, dealing with things then. But yeah, again, getting back to the finalizing my story, the guy who sold me the car got the car. I got the engine back. I was able to do some detailed work, repainted the engine, because the engine was painted, but it had sat on the engine stand for so long. Made sure everything was oiled, put the engine together. Had to get parts, because some parts he provided, some he didn't. Some parts I had to make another trip back down to his farm to get, and convince him to let me come and search through it, because he had a bunch of Oldsmobile parts. I had to convince him to let me come and look through his old Oldsmobile pile to find the parts that corresponded with the car. And I was like, at first I was like, hey, can I come do it, and do I need to give you any more money? He was like, no, just come and get it, because I wasn't taking anything extra that I didn't need. I just took exactly what the car was missing. Like, I think I was missing a AC compressor, and I said, well, I'm not going to rebuild it. I'll just get that to have it as a core, so if I go to the local place, I can turn in a core for it, and maybe have the appropriate brackets, because that was what I was missing. I was missing brackets for the AC compressor. I was missing brackets for the alternator, because there was no alternator that came with it. So I had to reaccessorize. And one of the hardest things I had a hard time finding for that 403 Oldsmobile was pulleys that were the correct pulleys for that one. I didn't know how hard it was to find the correct pulleys for it, but I went through a whole situation of looking at ones for, I think, Trans Ams or Firebirds that had the 6.6 liter, and then I had to make sure they fit between it. And I finally found the right ones. I kept looking at differences, and I think somebody had a chart, and I was able to find the right one visually and size wise that would fit it. Because I had the lower it was the water pump pulley that was one of the harder ones to find, and the lower crank pulley that a car that was equipped with AC. So it took me a while to find that, but I found it, and I was able to get that. And so after getting those and dealing with that, I think I had to go back. I had to make a trip down to his farm probably a couple times, and I got mostly everything I needed, because he had gave me stuff on the front end that was extra, that was some cool stuff that I didn't necessarily need, because he gave me a nice intake. It was Eldebrock, and it looked pretty new, but it was the one like I have on my 71 403. But I ended up going online and finding, because I wanted a EGR equipped one, because I wanted to keep this one factory looking. So I found I don't know the name offhand because I don't have it in front of me, but I found that one, and I was able to put that one on from a guy who had went LS, and so he got rid of a bunch of parts. So after a while, I just have been tooling on it. I started on up under the hood, finished what I wanted up under the hood, and I made my way to the interior. And the interior, you can see from these pictures that what I had done to the interior. The only thing that's wrong with the car as of now, to update you on the car as of now, the transmission is not working. When I got the transmission she provided me to me had sat on the side of the car, outside on the ground. The lower oil pan had rusted through a bit, and so when I got the car, the transmission had dirt divers and everything in it, and I thought I could quote unquote wash it out. So I think I washed it out, and it seemed like a bunch of dirt and stuff came out, because I guess dirt divers and stuff had got up in it, and they took dirt up in it. And I thought I had got everything out, because I washed it out, let it dry for probably a week or two, and then I poured transmission fluid in it, and I kind of, worked the thing around to make sure everything, it was fully soaked to where transmission fluid was coming out. I think I squirted some into that breather tube that's on the top. And like I said, it seemed like all the dirt was out. And so I think I didn't have a torque converter for it. I ordered a new torque converter, got that, put the car together, and it moved in. Fine and everything under its own power. But what I probably didn't check out, I probably should have checked, is to see if any other dirt came out from probably things that I didn't think about. Because if I disassembled it, I probably could have got a whole lot more crap out of it. But it probably had crap really pushed up in crevices and those pressure holes that I didn't know about. So I think I wasn't driving the car far. I just drove it around the neighborhood to see how it worked, and the car drove and moved pretty good. But I think a couple months later, it lost the forward gears. It lost the forward gears, and all it had was reverse. So, and then when I pulled the transmission, I drained the transmission to see what was in it. It ended up having a bunch of sand, looked like, and dirt in the oil. So that just told me everything I needed to know, at least what I speculated. So I'm in search of another transmission for it. I probably go 200 R4 on it, because it's not making a bunch of horsepower. So I can probably go to a standard build 200 R4 or something, just to put behind it for now, because it's not pulling that much power. But it runs great. As you can hear, it runs really good, and it's not a bad car. And like I said, I did that. I also forgot to mention, of course he gave me headers, because he gave me the manifolds, but I also put a new exhaust up on it that I bought from, I think, Jegs. I ordered one of those pieced together ones, and that's basically, it with the car. So if you guys have any questions down in, post down below in the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you had about something I might have left off, because I'm sure it's probably something I left off about me putting it together or what I went through with it. But like I said, it's a cool car, and if I get another transmission for it, maybe I just drive it like it is. Like I said, I'll just roadkill it, But, also right now I'm in the process of welding new floor pans in, and I've gotten floor pans from the Classic Rod Society, the floor pans. And that's a funny story too. I was looking at some stuff on Craigslist, and this guy had some floor plans, and I was like, oh, that's cool. That was what I could use. It was a good price that he was asking for them. And I said, but it was in Dallas, not in Houston. And my daughter lived in Dallas at the time. She was in college. So I reached out to the person on Craigslist, and I know it's taking a chance, but I said, asked him about purchasing them. I asked him would he be willing to meet at any of the local PDs in his area to pick it up, because I said I would have my daughter come to pick it up. and to pay him, would that be fine? He was like, oh, sure, no problem. And when he told me to give him a call on the phone, I can't remember when I called him about that, he was to tell me something. And when I heard his voice, I automatically knew who he was. I was like, hey, you're the guy from Classic Ride Society. I know that you're okay. I've been watching your videos for a while. And he was really cool. And my daughter met him, and my daughter said he was really cool. And she picked up the things and brought them home when she came home on break, up the floor pans. But right now, again, that's the last thing I've been working on, is getting around to welding in the floor pans. I just had cut them out and I measured everything. And also, because I didn't have a welder before, I just got a welder from my friend who lives in Oklahoma. He's the one who helped me build my 71 Olds 403 engine that I have in that, because it had a 350, but that's a story for another time on how that got destroyed. And also he built blueprinted the carburetors in both cars. He even blueprinted the carburetor that's in the 77 442. He did all the work to it and built it following the Cliff Ruggles about building that. And if you guys want to run Quadrajets on your car, which most Olds guys suggest that you do, because they're kind of reliable and they're good. Follow Cliff Ruggles, look him up, and he's a good person to reach out to also. He's really good. Buy his book, check him out. But I think that's about it. Again, if you have any questions, place them down below. Hey, and I'll answer them. Like I said, I wanted to follow up on the video I did for the car, because I just had the video and I posted it up. And again, I originally just posted it up for friends to be able to quickly send out the link to friends that was asking me what was going on with the car. And since I got some views on it, I figured I would put an explanation behind why I uploaded it. But hey, thanks.